Some stories flow through the veins of humanity, cross centuries, and are whispered even in the halls of kings. Some names are those an empire wishes to erase, yet can never truly silence. Rome ruled the world. With its sword, it conquered nations. With its law, it shaped civilizations. And with its fear, it made continents kneel. But there was one thing Rome could never predict. The fire of freedom burning inside a chained man can be stronger than an entire legion. That fire was born in the winds of Thrace. It ignited upon the sands of the arena, and it grew powerful enough to bring an empire to its knees. One name, one cry, one legend: Spartacus. Prepare yourself for this story, because this is not merely the tale of a gladiator, but the greatest no ever spoken in the history of mankind. From chains to the arena, birth, enslavement, and training in hell, Spartacus was born in Thrace, a land where freedom was earned with strength, and survival meant challenging nature itself. Even as a child, he carried the silence of a warrior. He listened to his enemies, sensed their movements, and learned to hold a shield as if it were a game. When Rome set foot in Thrace, Spartacus was still young, but his spirit refused to bow. Rome first took him as a soldier, then accused him of disobedience, and finally chained him as a slave. Today we hear the word slave and move on, but in those times a slave was not considered a human being. They could not speak, choose, or desire. They could only live or die. Spartacus was taken to Capua. Awaiting him there was the most brutal gladiator school in history, Ludus Magnus. Here men were not trained. Spectacles were manufactured. Wooden swords were twice as heavy as real steel. Armors tore into the back. Falling was a crime. Standing was a duty. And dying was, most of the time, the inevitable end. But Spartacus was more than a student. His movements were different. His mind sharp, his instincts lethal. And most importantly, the fire of freedom inside him could not be extinguished by any training. He studied every strike, memorized every fall, etched every pain into his memory, because he knew one day the gates would open, and he was waiting for that day. Escape through fire, the storm of freedom begins. One night the sky split open, rain hammered the stone walls, and fate quietly shifted its course. A whisper spread among the gladiators. "We're escaping!" The kitchen was stormed. Knives, iron rods, broken tool handles. Anything could become a weapon. 200 tried, 78 succeeded. Spartacus led them to Mount Vesuvius. Rome's light infantry followed their trail, but Rome still saw Spartacus as just a gladiator. That was their greatest mistake. Spartacus ordered ropes made from vine branches, and under the cover of night, his men slid down the mountain's cliffs like shadows. They circled behind the Roman troops and obliterated them. This was not an attack. This was a message. I will not die here. News of the victory spread across Italy. Every man in chains felt a spark ignite. Slaves rose like wildfire. Hundreds, then thousands joined Spartacus. He was no longer a fugitive. He was a leader, a commander of men, a beacon of hope. A freedom army of 70,000 was born. And at last, Rome felt fear. Crassus, Pompeius, and the Wall of Blood. The Senate gathered. For the first time they said, "This is no ordinary revolt. This could shake the very foundations of Rome." Those words came from the mouth of the strongest empire in history. Crassus was appointed, rich, powerful, ruthless. From the north marched Pompeius. Rome was unleashing its two greatest forces to crush Spartacus once and for all. Crassus built a massive fortification wall in the south, a stone vise meant to trap Spartacus and cut off any escape. Hunger began to spread. Disease followed. Disputes broke out within the ranks. But Spartacus did not yield. He broke through the wall. He shattered the legions. And he marched north again. Yet Pompeius was descending from the north. Crassus awaited in the south. Spartacus stood in the tightening jaws of a closing death trap. And still, he did not run. He did not hide. He did not surrender. He fought. The moment one man's spirit grew greater than Rome. Dawn did not come. The sky was the color of ash. Even the wind had fallen silent. Spartacus stepped before his soldiers. He spoke no words. He simply raised his sword. That single gesture set fire to the hearts of thousands. The battle began. The earth shook beneath their feet. Shields splintered. Swords screamed like dying voices. Spartacus was wounded again and again. He fell to his knees, but he rose. He fell once more, and he rose again. One of Crassus's commanders later wrote, "Even in his final moments, Spartacus was attacking. On his knees, gripping his sword with both hands, hurling himself forward in fury. This was not just a battle. This was proof that a man's spirit cannot be broken." Spartacus died that day, but his spirit became something far greater than Rome itself, the symbol of freedom. The eternal finale, when a legend refuses to die. Crassus crucified 6,000 captured rebels along the length of the Via Appia. Rome wanted to show its power, to declare, "This is the fate of those who defy us." But there was one thing Rome did not understand. Yes, Spartacus had died, but his idea would live far longer than Rome itself, because Spartacus's body was never found, because Spartacus could not be confined to a grave, because Spartacus was no longer merely a man. He had become a fire, and that fire still burns today. The fire of freedom, the fire of those who refuse to bow to fate, the fire that reminds the world that a single human being can change everything. Spartacus's story did not end with death. It continued as a legacy that survives in one immortal sentence: "I am Spartacus,